Anyway, okay, so Coffee Hunt. What would you were the one who originally came up with the idea. What were your initial what was your inspiration?
Well, I don't know if anyone realizes this, that I kind of like coffee a little bit. And, on the broader context, I've been playing around with a thing called Bitter Bliss for about, I guess, 5 years now. And in Bitter Bliss, I've gone around and reviewed probably about 450, 500 cafes for various people like Yelp and Google, and become Google local expert and basically enjoyed coffee, which is great for me, but it doesn't really do what I set out to do with Bitter Bliss in the first place, which was actually have a source of news, have an event calendar, have something that is almost like an education portal for people who are looking to find out more information about coffee.
And have some reviews on cafes that, aren't about their, banana bread.
Well, I love banana bread as much as the next person, but I love specialty coffee even more. And so this is where, if you ever see me reviewing a place based off of food, just don't take it seriously.
It's harsher than the.
Well, look, I love food. And to be honest, the secret is that I used to go out and review only food. In fact, my favorite was big breakfast. So I'd go out and just eat a ton of big breakfast. And then I got to about 97 kilos. And I thought, you know what? I love big breakfasts, but I love being under 100 kilos more. And so then I moved on to whiskey. And I love some single origin whiskey.
Yes.
Like some single malt whiskeys. And for that, I was going through a couple of bottles a month of $80 a bottle of whiskey. And I thought that, you know what, this is
An
probably
expensive habit.
Well, to be honest, it's a cheaper habit than going out and drinking at a local pub. Because for a single shot of whiskey, you'd be paying $14 a shot for 30 mils. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, but there's like some really well-groomed guy in a leather vest.
Yeah, actually, I think the bigger issue is that when you're drinking that much alcohol at home by yourself, I think they have groups for those sorts of things. And that's not really how I wanted to see myself going. And also my wife thought, well, you know what, this is probably not the best use of your time. So there was always coffee. And I guess not a lot of people know that other than drinking coffee, I actually did used to be a barista back in the late 90s.
Oh, yes.
That's right. I'm old.
I was 10 years old in the late 90s.
What, in all of the late 90s? You were just 10? Like,
Yes.
progressively? No,
It was like
like
like how if you fail a grade, you have to like stay back that
so
year.
you failed 10.
I failed 10 a couple of times.
Well, I guess, look, if you're going to fail at any time in your life, failing as a 10-year-old, probably you don't really have high standards at 10.
People, it's surprisingly easy to fail at 10.
And they're forgiving. But yeah, no. When I was a barista, it was a different world entirely. Like, so you're talking about ristrettos for everything. There was no such thing as a left and right shot. Like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
Cappuccinos were not like latte art. They were these architectural structures of foam, and it was different.
Massive.
And then you get a gust of wind, and they float off. And there was things like Vienna coffees, where you have actually whipped cream on top of Oh, it was the time. It was the bomb.
You're so eager. Sell it.
Well, but you know what? The truth of the matter is, I was really lucky. So I actually was a regular customer at a place called Cafe Hernandez, and they've been a staple of Sydney for a long, long time. Back then, there was the roaster. His name was Freddie, and I think everyone there at that time was a little bit crazy, but he was crazy in the right sort of way. Like, he was the introduction to coffee from different countries was something that you couldn't get a lot of back then. So essentially, you're getting the commercial grade medicinal kind of over roasted coffee. That was the staple everywhere. But
black.
But there it was like Kenyan or Colombian. And, like, fair enough. Okay, so in those times, Kenyan was one flavor. Like, it's kind of like a Neapolitan ice cream thing. Like, oh, it's Colombian, so it's going to taste like this.
Yes.
Whereas you've got Ethiopian coffee right now, which could taste like anything. Like the flavor range in coffee these days is phenomenal.
Oh, I say one of my favorites was just recently a good strong pineapple like oh it's amazing.
Yeah, well, I was at a Five Senses cupping the other night at Elbow Room,
Hmm.
and there was one coffee at the end. It was a natural. It wasn't overly funky in terms of the sweetness that was coming through, but like you talk about tropical fruits, it was like a tropical like banana punch type thing. But it was delicious. It was
Yeah.
amazing. So when people talk about coffee and they say, "Well, it needs to taste like chocolate and nuts," yeah, it certainly can taste like chocolate and nuts. It doesn't necessarily have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm really excited for the time when uh, people can accept. So James and I judge together actually quite a bit recently. And one of the things that I love to find in the barista comps are the really, really fruity milk drinks. Like when someone, some of the stuff coming out from the competitor from Anna.
Which one? There were 6.
Um, oh,
Let's just say a competitor from
a
Honor
competitor from Anna.
at Nationals.
Fruit bomb in the milk beverage, natural Ethiopian, amazing, amazing. The only problem is I don't think everyone's quite ready for that. I think a lot of people still do expect their chocolatey, nutty, malty, safe flavors. But
Look,
that's okay. We're learning. We're
well,
everyone.
I think that the broad brush and like kind of moving it back to what Coffee Hunt is coffee itself is a journey, and like it's been said by everybody and their dog, but it really is. Like hell, I started drinking Nescafe Blend 43 back when I was in high school, and I survived. And you look at progression of instant coffee through to these days pod coffee is really popular, but also like more broad brush, like going in and expecting a strong coffee. Like what exactly do you mean by that? And for my mind, I'm a little bit opinionated on. I tend to think that a strong coffee essentially equates to something that's going to be a little bit more medicinal. So if you think about a medicine like a Chinese or a Japanese medicine that works, it's something that's not necessarily going to be tasting really nice.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got something that is going to be a little bit more intense. That's not necessarily an enjoyable intensity, but because it's not enjoyable, you're like, wow, that was strong. Like that's really going to do something for me.
That'll put hair on your chest.
Yeah, but let's maybe reframe that around bread. Okay, so think about bread. So you go into a bakery and you go, "I'd like a loaf of bread," and they give you a loaf of bread. And if you did the same sort of thing as they do with a lot of coffee, and you went and you go, "I'd like some strong bread," and they brought you out this burnt black loaf of bread, slightly carbonized on the outside. That's strong bread. So
it's a phenomenal analogy.
it's probably not exactly what I would choose to drink. But that said, I think it's important, especially as sensory judges, to drink absolutely anything that I can get my hands on, and I go out and try and find any coffees that I can, because if I'm only drinking 90 plus coffee, I don't really have anything to compare it to.
Yeah, you should every now and then. What was the one that you said that just to give you a baseline, you go into McDonald's and you order a
macchiato or something.
Macchiato
in fact,
from McCafe.
Yeah, well, we did that. Actually, it's really interesting. So McDonald's themselves are doing some really interesting stuff. Back, it was a long time ago, actually, a couple of years ago, and we went and picked up one of the trainers at the airport, and so we went to the McDonald's at the domestic airport, and the wand was disgusting. It was caked on milk. The macchiato was barely drinkable. It was quite horrendous. But then recently I went to the Corner, which is kind of like the laboratory for McDonald's.
Yeah.
And you've got your Black Eagles, and you've got your single origin
Looks
coffees.
like a proper cafe.
It looks like a proper cafe. But the only thing that kind of annoyed me was that they gave me a plastic spoon. So you have like the proper saucer, they have a proper cup, and then you've got a plastic spoon. That's
tough. Yeah.
Well, I relate it to, again, like going back to single malt whiskey. It's like, okay, here's a really nice 25-year-old aged oak barrel, blah blah blah, in a
paper
plastic
cup.
paper cup, plastic cup. Like, there's just something that's not right about that.
Yeah.
But look, coffee quality wise, I think that they're bringing up their standard significantly.
It's good.
In
It's
fact,
fantastic.
well, it's one of these things that is being done across the board, and it's something that I find really exciting. That the worst coffee you're going to find out there is pretty damn good.
Especially compared to what I'm sure everyone was drinking 15 years ago.
Yes, there was a time that was 15 years ago.
There was?
Thank you. Yes, young people
I
these
don't know.
days, no respect.
Although then again, I was drinking coffee in the late 90s.
Yeah, when I was
as
10.
well.
I was drinking coffee when I was 10.
Well, I was. Actually, my first ever coffee was when we were living in Eritrea. And it was grown down the road, and it was roasted over in a skillet over a fire, and then they add some frankincense and waft it around the circle.
And a little bit of
ground-
poppy? Or...
Yeah.
No?
No, but it was ground by hand and brewed in a clay jug and filtered through a wad of horsehair. No, that was I would say I started very, very early. My mother says that the second coffee I ever had was brewed in an espresso machine that was made before the Industrial Revolution. She said that
They made them to last back
oh
then.
well, yeah. But apparently being a barista back then was a far more dangerous occupation, whereas now, grind setting is too fine, you get a little flashing light that says flow meter error, but, you're not going to damage anything. Apparently back then, if the grind was too fine, your boiler would explode.
Yeah. That sounds like old steam engines. Pressure does amazing thing. It's like making your own pipe bomb.
Oh, yeah.
It's great. And spreading coffee everywhere. So what could be better?
Really, it's just, aggressive coffee love.
Yeah, aggressive coffee love. And that's probably a really good transition point
Okay.
to what it is we're planning on doing. So CoffeeHunt, if you go there right now, you can see a few different things. It's only been up for about a week now, but already we've got an events calendar, which I'm updating as I hear about events. So basically, we're looking at cuppings and we're looking at various other things that are happening around the
Things
industry.
open to the public, things that are relevant. No, it'll be. Actually, I think that's going to be a huge part of Coffee Hunt. I think there's a lot of people who want to know even just what's going on locally for them. And since we've started opening up events for the Northern Beaches Coffee Association, we've seen a lot of people who they want to participate. They just don't know when or where these things are going on. So
Well, to be honest, it's like the article. So I wrote an article, and we'll be writing articles on Coffee Hunt as well. But I wrote an article on the elbow room cupping for 5 cents as I went to the other night. And I kind of broke it down into two categories. So you've got one where people are doing it professionally and almost every day, if not every day, and they're cupping for quality, they're cupping for consistency, they're cupping for bringing greens, they're cupping for various other things, but they're doing it all the time. Like, it's their job. And they're like, cupping. Oh, I just drank God knows how many cups, and like I spit it all out because it's far too much. And then you've got the other side who are like, oh, there's a cupping on? Where? I can taste 12 copies? Yeah, come on, let's go. And you've got like these excited people who are like, yeah, I'll get into it. And sometimes their excitement goes a little bit ahead of themselves, and they, stir the cup after it's, the coffee's been taken out, or they forget to rinse their spoon.
please attend a cupping etiquette class before you go to a public cupping.
Yeah. I've got a funny feeling that at some point there's going to be a how-to guide on cupping on the website. And in fact, down the bottom of the post for the cupping that happened at Elbow Room, I've put a few hints down the bottom. And they're not necessarily hints. They're more like, please be kind to other people and don't spread disease. Like, you want to dip your spoons into the hot water and like just the basic stuff. You don't have to run the cupping, but you do need to pay attention to the person who is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that, yes, very prudent.
So actually, the other thing that's on the calendar right now, I don't know if you're aware, Will, but within about 3 weeks,
3 weeks?
there is going to be a little bit of a competition.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
What competition could that be? I can't do the shtick.
Hey, well, look,
it could have been, wait, Oh, James, if only there was a way to keep track of how long it was before the competition started.
Hmm. Yes. Or maybe everyone's position in the competition.
Oh, or
Or
a way to save those times and dates to your
yeah.
calendar.
Yeah, so all of that detail on the World Barista Championship that's going to be happening in Dublin is already on the website. So day one, day two schedules, there are a couple missing, but that's because they're missing from the actual schedule that's posted online. Nothing I can do about that. We'll be updating those as soon as we know. But basically, for Australians, it's going to be a great year to be watching the WBC because I think the first competition starts about 5 p.m. at time. And I know that Hugh, for those of you who are going to be watching the Australia, so the owner can take it, second year in a row.
Yeah, that would be so. That would be
That'd be nice.
That would be nice. That would be very
Yeah,
interesting.
hopefully Hugh is considerate enough to win it for the rest of us because it's
He better.
it's his responsibility.
If he knows what's good for him, he will.
Though that said, you got Ben put back up there again from Canada, and you've got Charlotte from
It's
from
a
France.
good lineup. There'll be some really. I can't wait to watch.
But there are a couple of new faces there as well from the USA. So it's going to be it's a fresh and having gone through the entire list of people who are competing, it's a massive competition. Like it is. I dream of one day being a WC judge, and I also have nightmares about it because the number of competitors you have per day in that sort of competition, wow, those guys must be stoned.
Bathroom breaks? What are those?
Yeah. I drink coffee, but those guys, that's pretty some serious stuff. Yeah. Catheters for all. But anyway, so when
it's like the astronauts have, there's this less invasive, way to. Never mind, that's disgusting.
Yeah, I don't think we need to talk about the body's filtration system. We'll go into filter coffee a little bit later.
Okay.
But anyway, so when the WBC does come up, I'm going to be trying to make a post on every competitor, or at least the ones who bring something new and interesting. Because hell, these guys are the barista champions for their country, right? So
and I feel like that's exactly what people want to hear about as well. Is what about their performance was interesting? What was it that they're bringing to the table that no one else is? If we can provide a quick and easy way to look through that list and find out which competitors you really need to see the full performance of, I feel like we're doing a service.
Well, think about last year. So last year, had anyone heard of carbonic?
Carbonic maceration.
There we go. Yeah. No. So it's that sort of thing. Or when you have a look at different pressures. Was it Ben? Ben put who had the pressure machine.
Yeah.
He put his espresso in there,
brewing it in a near vacuum and stuff like that. Yeah.
Because everyone needs to brew coffee in a near vacuum. It's just the thing to do.
Yeah.
It's also a really great way of making a mess. Thanks, Shaz. Yeah, we saw your experiment. Well done. But yeah, so these things are hard to replicate, but it's really interesting to find out this information. So, look, I'm going to be watching it. We're going to be watching all of it. So if we can note down some stuff, and it might take a while to get all of it up there, but we'll do what we can.
Yeah.
So
remember, we also have jobs.
Well, theoretically, some of us more than others. All right, so that's the calendar aside. Okay. Then there's also so that's the WBC stuff, and there's also a list of cafes in Sydney. So what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to make an extensive list of absolutely every single cafe in Sydney. There are quite a few, and nor am I going to use this particular page as a place for a review because there's quite a lot of things that I have issues with reviews, and as somebody who does them all the time, I have issues with myself, which is probably another podcast in itself. But
no, that's a therapy session.
That's not a podcast. Hi, my name's James. It's been 1 hour since my last review.
James.
But look, I
20 Hail Marys and
no rosary beer for me.
Okay.
Yeah, so I want to have kind of just a list of places. So there's a list of cafes, which is really easy to find with all the opening hours, what coffees they're using, whether or not they sell beans, whether they do V60s, that sort of stuff. It's pretty informative. It's got their Instagram feed, a map to it. Mm-hmm. There's also a map if you want to find out what cafe is close to you. So it's pretty useful. But basically the idea is if you're on the map, then you're recommended. And it's not going to
It's a good
say,
system.
yeah, it's not going to say who's best. It's just going to say, if you're in this area, this is one that I would go to.
Check them out.
Yeah. Because there might be something in the future that I will be doing with certain people, looking at finding the best cafes in Sydney. Again, not on banana bread. This is based just purely off of coffee. But that's a work in progress.
Yeah.
So
And I think one of the big things there is building the systems of credibility to say that this isn't just just one random review. This is a well researched. We got a team of people who are credible in their sensory skills and do it properly because we don't want to look like a bunch of idiots.
Well, we look like a bunch of idiots anyway, especially in front of this camera. But
Is it the angle?
Yeah, and the balding, it's just terrible.
I never noticed that until you brought it
Pointed out, yeah. Well, this is why you cut it short, right? It's even worse from the back.
I think they'll understand. This is a work in progress. This
Yeah.
is our first little, and then, yeah.
Oh, that's right. And the other thing that's going to be on the website, these sorts of things, videos. So haven't really decided on the exact format, how long it's going to be. This is probably going to be a long one because we're just rabbiting on about stuff. But
This is good. It's an introduction to what we're going to be doing later.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I'd love to keep demonstrations of like brewing and cupping and things like that down to a really nice short 5-minute format. I get a lot of fluff when you're going in to try and I want to know I want to know how to do a V60. I hate it when it's mostly like really cool shots. You can't actually see anything, but you see coffee dripping and like fade ins and fade outs and like.
Well, we might be doing a few of those as well, but
but
what are the elements that you're looking
substance?
for?
Yeah. There will be reviews on coffees that we try. Hopefully, we can. We've already got some coffee to try this evening.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of coffees to try. We'll be talking more about those later on, but
hopefully we can entice a couple more of those out of some local roasteries and.
Yeah, well, look, to be honest, what we want to do is we want to highlight the best of the coffee industry, more specifically to New South Wales. But if somebody wants to send us coffee from Japan, we're going to drink it.
Just saying.
Just saying, subtle hint. It's but or America or
I would
anyway.
say that there's some damn good filter coffee coming out of some places in the U.S.
I gotta say, it has been a long time since I've had some hard coffee. So if you guys in Portland really want to send us some coffee, we'll be quite happy to taste it and talk about it. Just saying.
Shout out to Topeka. Yeah, send us some coffee from Oklahoma.
But anyway, so we want to taste the coffee. What we're going to be doing is we're trying to do something which is a little bit more interesting. So we're going to do a 3-dose V60, so that we can try and under-extract it, over-extract it, and hopefully have a perfect extraction, so that we can compare the different flavors. And essentially what we're trying to do is make up for the fact that we're not going to have a lot of time or a lot of coffee to dial it in and try and find the exact point where it should be. But we're going to try our best with what we've got.
Yeah.
But so we'll do the V60s. We'll also
do a cupping, just a standard SCA cupping, and we'll score it the same way a Q grader would score it.
Yeah.
Even though none of us are Q graders yet.
Yeah, one day. Hey, look, again, when somebody wants to pay $2,500 for me to become a Q grader, I will show up and take the test. Until then, I'm just going to drink all the coffee that I can. And then the last one we'll do is as an espresso. Now, the coffee is not necessarily going to be roasted for espresso. We're not trying to say, this is going to taste terrible. I think it's kind of interesting to taste filter coffee through an espresso machine.
Sometimes you can make it work.
In fact, quite often with the Omni roast stuff that a lot of people are doing, that's what they do. They just use the one coffee for everything. So I think it's only fair that we, I guess, get to drink more coffee. Yeah, which I'm totally okay with.
I'm okay with more coffee.
All right. So anyway, as we go through, one last thing, news. We were talking about before.
Yes. There is quite a lot of coffee news that comes out, but not a lot of it seems to make it to the surface of the internet. Actually, we've got Paul Asquith, who works with me, who seems to spend a lot of his day trying to find relevant news, things that are coming out, whether it's studies or even just changes in global coffee, whatever.
Stuff.
We'd like to bring that stuff to your attention, make it easy for you to find.
Yeah. Now, what I'm not going to be doing is I'm not going to be republishing people's material because yes, it's their material. But what we do have is basically it's a pretty link to all the information that we find informative. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to avoid just your stock standard media release. I'm trying to avoid. Basically, we're filtering out stuff that isn't really worth your time and focusing on stuff that might be.
Get rid of the fluff.
Yeah, and the other good thing is on the new page, you can actually filter the articles by topic. So if you're only interested in environmental issues, you can just show environmental issues. So hopefully it'll be a resource for anyone who wants to go and look at that sort of stuff. We will also be publishing our own articles.
I was going to say, that being said, I'm very interested in doing some unbiased research, maybe some comparisons of gear and
yeah, absolutely.
there's a bunch of stuff that I really want to test, and this is a great outlet for it.
Okay. So at this point, it's probably also worth saying that Will is probably the most excited person about the mechanics of coffee.
It's fun. It's fiddly. There's so much going on.
Yeah, and I love drinking coffee. So if you look at it in kind of context, you've got a mechanical geek and you've got a coffee geek, and together we're kind of going to make this work.
Geeking out.
Yeah.
His geek and my geek.
Yeah. The funny story is the first time we met was an 8-hour drive down to Melbourne, but the contents of that drive shall remain off video.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, it was fun times. It was also followed by Will following me around on CoffeeHunt.
Yeah, that was the first time I'd ever followed someone who drink. Like honestly, it still surprises me how much coffee you can drink in a day. Like I got to drink a lot of coffee for my job, but even you put me to shame.
Well, yeah, it is. I don't like to order coffee. Sure. There's various types of coffee that I prefer. But the barista has been standing behind his machine. He's dialed in the coffee. He's been tasting his coffee throughout the day. Theoretically, the barista should know exactly what is tasting best. So why would I be telling them what to be tasting best? I want them to give me what they think is the best representation of the coffee that they've got. I figure that's the best way for me to get a really good experience. I'm not going to go down to Backspin, which is a local Scotch bar, and tell the barista, all about whiskey, because God knows they know a shitload more than I do. But yeah, anyway, so
I do that too, but it's just because I'm indecisive. I'm like, what do you want? I'm like, I don't know. What do I want?
Yeah, and to be honest, like I don't think that everyone should start doing this because baristas will hate you. But when you wear a coffee monkey shirt and you look like me and you become recognizable, they're like, he's back again. Okay, yeah.
I say, yeah, I never really even considered. Like, I don't know. What do I want? Are you mimicking me? Are you mimicking me? Get the hell out. Yeah.
Though, to be honest, I think the other extreme is also as bad. I'll have a half, triple, blah, 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 blah. At some point, I think ordering coffee, we're probably going to need to focus on that and think about how to reframe what is actually happening. I.e., if you're ordering a weak soy, decaf, whatever, the idea of weak coffee, it's like, or 3 strength. We measure it, like a lot of places weigh in and weigh out coffee, but I doubt they're doing 3/4 strength.
3/4 strength. If you cut off 3/4 of the way through the extraction, it's not 3/4 strength either. So, yeah, really, that's a good question. How do you know? Oh, you do the entire extraction, you weigh it, then you give it a good pour part of it out and get.
Yeah. Anyway. So we'll be focusing on that sort of stuff later on. Yeah, this is going to be a video podcasting of Ill Repute. I can't even say that word. Whatever.
Oh my god,
No,
no, I
you
can't
can't
say
say it
it.
either.
Okay.
No more coffee of these guys, and we haven't even started the coffee
Oh, I
section.
know, I know.
Um,
Let's get to that.
let's get to that.
I'm ready for coffee.
All right. So anything else, just go to coffeehunt.com.au and check it out. You can find us also on Instagram and on Twitter.
Yes.
But now,
One thing I would also like to say is between James and I, there's a lot of things we want to accomplish, both tasting and experimenting and bringing news to people. But if you guys figure out something that you'd like us to do, let us know. Is not to say that we'll run out of ideas, but we'll run out of ideas.
no, to be honest, there's so much happening in coffee these days, and specifically after WBC stuff. Like, can you imagine all of the various things that we're going to have to be trying to replicate?
Okay, maybe not run out of ideas. Maybe, yeah.
What would you like to focus on?
Yeah,
what
that's the
what
one.
is something that you're going to find interesting?
What would you like to hear about first?
Yeah. Because the other thing that we want to do is we haven't really worked out how regularly we're going to be doing these. But if we can have smaller chunks of maybe the coffee review section, like so, for example, if we were sent the most recent options from the various roasteries around Sydney, so that we could talk about, for example, this month or this week, you've got this coffee coming from Sample, or this coffee coming from the single roasters, and this coffee coming from Mecca. And this is going to start to show up at all of the various cafes that serve those coffees. And people, hopefully you, can go out and then drink it. So it's something that we could probably do on a weekly basis. But we both have busy schedules, and we'll try and make this work. But
There'll probably always be something going up new, but
yeah. Anyway,
big sit down podcasts.
yeah, we'll make it work. It's also going to be a much shorter form normally. So kind of the idea that I've got at the moment is that the beginning we have more of a news section. So if there is anything recent that's come up, so for example, the scoring that happens in the WBC, there was talk about it being a live scoring.
Yeah, which sounds absolutely terrifying. Oh, yeah, I would say for anyone who's ever been a judge, the idea of like your scores being immediately posted without any kind of deliberation or
I guess at that level, like once you do it, it's kind of written in stone anyway. But yeah, that's kind of freaky. But yeah, anyway, stuff like that. So I want to have a news section, and then maybe talking about the coffee, or talking about a skill around the coffee, and how we might even just break those down into different parts of the podcast or video cast that can be watched by themselves. So early days. This is the first one. Stuff will happen.
Yeah, stuff will happen.
And now, time for coffee.
Should we have some like sign off?
Yeah, I think we just did.
Oh, the thumbs up. Oh, is that going to be our thing?
I don't know. And we're back, and slightly more caffeinated.
Slightly.
Just a little. Hey, fun fact, Will. Do you know what 250 grams of coffee is? It's the perfect amount to make 3 filters and 1 espresso.
Yes, that's true.
We have gone through quite a bit of coffee. And today's coffee is brought to us thanks to the Beanbag. So they had contacted me on Instagram and said, we've got some coffee for you to try, and happily we accepted. And you know what? It was a really interesting first go around, and I think we've given it a fair shot. So what we've done for both coffees is that we set up a filter, so the V60 for 3 different measurements. The first was 20 grams, 400 mils, for about 2, all of them about...
Both.
Go for it.
I'll just say both coffees ended up being a bit on the darker side. So all the extractions came, like all the extractions were quite short. We both, after we initially played around with it, both were kind of surprised because normally we do our brews in about 2:30 to 3 minutes. All of these, when we did finally hit an ideal brew, were actually just over 2 minutes. So yeah, don't be surprised. But we did get three really different extractions out of each of these just by varying the dose. Three, yeah,
Yeah.
very defined. Yeah, keeping the yield the same, just varying the dose quite a bit. So yeah.
And I think it's probably a good methodology to keep up. So we went with the 20 grams, 24 grams, and 28 grams to 400 mils of water. At 94 degrees temperature, if you're interested, throughout the whole thing. And I got to say, Will was really consistent. Like it was either 210 or 215 for each in terms of time. But yeah, so how about we have a look at the first one?
Yeah, sure.
So the first coffee that we had was, let's have a look here, was the Colombian coffee, and it's La Perla, limited edition. So, what do you reckon, Will?
I definitely favored the well, actually, in this case, it was a more of an extraction with the 20 grams and the 400 grams out.
I think what we were both surprised by was that it seemed very soluble. So, like the roast date on this is the 17th of May, and today is the 30th of May. So it should be ready to go.
But when as soon as the water made contact with the coffee, it
bloomed.
Yeah, like a 1 day old coffee. That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
Although I'll say the final product, the final extraction tasted quite normal. Initially we did get some kind of roasty flavors, but I got to say, yeah, the 20 grams in, 400 grams out was actually ended up being kind of a really interesting, balanced, kind of nice acidity. Yeah.
Especially now, what was really surprising about this one, and it might in fact make a nice cold brew, is that when it cooled down to room temperature, suddenly the balance in the body was really quite nice, and quite a nice mouthfeel.
Yeah. I got to say though, the opposite side of this extraction, so the one where we actually dosed 28 grams, was fairly caustic. It was hard to look past the like I said, the roasty flavors with the that extraction.
Yeah. So overall, so when we just having a look at the appearance of it, what we've done is we gave ourselves a grade. So something that's super light being a 1, and something that's like a full city dark kind of shiny roast being a 10. Say this one's probably about a 7.
It was a color that you expect to see with a lot of espresso roasts, but like I said, it came out actually pretty well as in one of our extractions, and I would be very interested to taste it as a cold brew or something that or iced pour over or something like that, because when it got down to room temperature, both while we were cupping it and with one of our extractions, it became very nice.
So overall flavor-wise, it was quite a robust coffee, really quite dark, almost bitter chocolate, quite a low sweetness, and maybe a bit too much on the carbon kind of finish.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, there were. I agree. I totally agree. One of the things that kind of we were both laughing at is like sweet kind of green tomato is not.
Well, so that was much more into the cupping. So we
I
did
was
cupping.
gonna say when we're cupping it is we were both laughing because on one of the descriptors they give is
It's right here.
Sorry.
The descriptor for
that
that
was
sweet
tomato.
Yeah.
But when we actually started tasting, kind of.
Well, when we first tasted, so for me, I got a really quite low acidity. So, and a 1 to 6 rating, we scored it about a 2. And body-wise, it was quite intense. So probably about a 4 out of 6. and for me, the sweetness is also quite low. So it's an interesting coffee. To be honest, it was quite a nice balanced coffee in that sort of context.
Yeah. But it wasn't anything like, like when it was hot, it wasn't something that,
no,
knocks your socks off. It was a pretty, I don't want to say boring. That sounds really bad.
well, no,
But
no.
it was kind of a basic coffee when it was hot. It was yeah.
Yeah, but
Everything kind of in balance, but nothing really standing out.
yeah, to be honest, I think that sort of coffee is something that a lot of people would enjoy.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not something that was bright with a sweetness or some sort of overcoming characteristic. But again, so with the cupping, one that cooled down is when we both looked at each other and said, "Look, there's there's something to this. The mouthfeel is certainly improved."
Yeah, and even though like you get some kind of vegetal flavors, but they were nice. They're like you find that I prefer really sweet fruity coffees, but there's a huge market for kind of savory vegetal, and this one was a good example of that. Like it was a nice. I'd be happy to get served that,
Especially cold.
especially cold.
Yeah. Now, espresso wise, on this one, it was a little bit harder to dial it in. Now, both these coffees that we received from the beanbag, like I asked for a filter coffee, so I'm assuming that these are filter coffees, though it does, neither bag actually mentions that it's a filter coffee. So I'm not sure what we can assume by that. The La Perla, it does say it's a house blend single origin, which is probably a little bit confusing in terms of packaging. But I think overall for the espresso, it became quite acidic in a citric way, but without the sweetness. So if you can imagine it being quite aggressive, but without that balancing, moderating effect of the sweetness.
Kind of a lemony sweetness for me, like kind of a basic citrus. Yeah, like
Yeah.
It was, I can't really say too much more about it.
No. So overall, I think it was certainly an interesting coffee to try, and we were really grateful to get it. But if we were going to try it again, I'd certainly be looking at a cold brew method for it.
Yeah, like I said, or I would love to try it again. Do a kind of a more concentrated pour over ice. I think that would actually be a really lovely drink with this coffee. You'd get some of that nice acidity and not have to wait for it to come all the way down to room temperature. It's just
unfortunately, as I said before, 250 grams was the perfect amount for what we did because we used up all the coffee.
all of it.
But, we've got to drink a little bit of coffee. And speaking of coffee, we also got one from Kai Coffee. So this one's the Kenya Gondo. And it was certainly different from the start.
Wasn't for what was well, like you said, he asked for a filter roast. It wasn't exactly what I expected. It seemed a bit dark. I mean, nice even roast color, like
so again,
well
probably
taken care of, but
on the same 1 to 10 scale, probably about a 7 again.
like something that you really expect to see in the hopper of a good specialty shop. And the filter coffee that we made out of this was not really what I was expecting from a Kenyan. With a Kenyan, you expect if it's really high quality, you get some like crazy tartaric acidity and like that pineapple and stuff like that. And at the very least, you should get some really pronounced citrus because that's what Kenya is known for. I gotta say, I didn't really have that high level of acidity that I was expecting.
No, for me, again, out of 6, I probably would only rate it a 2 in terms of acidity.
Yeah.
And the body was kind of like middle.
I would say, was it the one where we dosed 28 grams? That the body was phenomenal,
and really great mouthful.
Velvety, just a really pleasant tactile. Oh God, I drank too much coffee. A really great tactile experience.
Lightweight.
But yeah, like I said, it wasn't really what I was expecting from the Kenyan.
No. But
And
and it's
still.
just a sec
Oh,
before you go
sorry.
there, at the 28 as well. So the mouthfeel, the body was fantastic, but the finish was probably still a little bit too carbon.
Yeah, again, some of those like kind of astringent flavors as an aftertaste kind of lingered. As we decreased the dose, it got more interesting. Like some more acidity came out, but then that kind of astringency was replaced with a lot of dryness.
So it lost the really good body and really good mouthfeel.
Yeah, and it kind of it was yeah. I don't think I found a really happy. Well, I don't think I found a point with the filter that I was really happy with what I'd produced,
And then
and then we put it through the espresso machine, which just in case you're wondering, we have a big Anthem S450 and a Slayer.
well, doesn't everyone have an Anthem and a Slayer?
I mean, everyone's
Who doesn't
home
have one of
setup
those?
should be
Yeah.
$25,000. But no, the espresso that we made, it was 21.5 grams in, 37 grams out, and in just over 30 seconds with about a 5-second pre-infusion, and it was great. It was alive.
Yeah.
It was vibrant, really interesting acidity, nice texture. Like it was a good espresso. It was.
The lime zest, like, so it was really quite nice and balanced. And again, the dark chocolate was there, but in a much more integrated and that delicious.
Like the aftertaste kind of went from being how do we describe it before, a bit astringent to like suddenly you're thinking like dark chocolate aftertaste. Like it was a really good espresso.
Yeah. So I guess what we're saying is that while as a filter, it was really interesting at 28 grams to 400 mils.
Yeah.
It's a really good espresso.
Yeah.
So, and if you can get some, I would certainly give it a go. Like it was something that was really quite interesting.
I was. These were cool coffees.
Yeah.
I'm really glad we get a chance to put them on the bench and give them a try.
Absolutely. So thank you again to the Beanbag for sending that through. If you're looking for the Beanbag, it's thebeanbag.com.au. Yep.
Show them.
There you go.
This is. I love.
How about that packaging?
Yeah. This is pretty cool.
No, you can't make that into a pillow. Well, actually, you probably could.
What about like just for my head?
No, please, let's not play that game just yet, and not with a video going. No water boarding you.
No.
All right.
Where are your rebel friends now? No, anyway.
All right. So yes, we're a little bit caffeinated. We've spent quite a bit of time doing this one. We didn't have the sheets, as it turns out, for the SCA cupping.
We'll have that next time.
But I think we did go through the acidity, body, and the sweetness. So it's and we've talked about texture. So we've covered a lot of the bases.
Overall, just to summarize opinions, I think would be
Overall, for me, I think that one, it could be a really good. How about a little bit closer so people can actually see it? Okay, so I think that the Lavilla from the Columbia Coffee was a really nice cold brew, or at least it could be. We would love to try out that brew method.
Something's got to be said is when if you follow the general rule that a good coffee gets better as it cools down. I would say that they're clearly starting with a quite a nice coffee to begin with. I'd have it again.
All right. And the Kenya Gondo from Kai was the surprise.
Yeah.
So it really we were kind of going through. So we did all the cuppings and we did all the filters. And we're like, oh, okay, I guess we better do the espressos. And bang!
Yeah,
it was really quite impressive. So
best espresso I've had all week.
It's
only Monday.
It's only Monday. Yeah, well. Anyway, so this is probably where we call it to close tonight. If you have any comments, please let us know what you think we need to add.
We'll work on refining this process so it's a little bit more streamlined and coherent and less weird.
No, it's going to be weird.
Okay, it's going to be weird. But less... No.
Actually, I think the refined process is so it doesn't take us all night to do. Yeah. Look, it's fun
It's only
drinking
been
coffee.
3.5 hours.
Yeah, it's fun drinking coffee, but I think for a short podcast, hopefully we'd like to get these down to
Our wives would like to see us.
maybe. But yeah, we'd like to get these down to about 15 minutes or so. We'll see how we go. I know that there's a lot of people out there who struggle to keep podcasts and videocasts short, and we are going to be one of those people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll
We
do it.
both really enjoy the sounds of our own voices.
Actually, we really don't. But really, luckily, you've got a fast forward link right there, right in front of you. So if you get bored
we'll
at
do
any
this.
time,
We'll break it into chapters, and all the chapters where it's just like
hang on a
random
second.
chat.
What's this wee business, white man? Like you're, yeah. Anyway, so for more information, over to coffeehunt.com.au. Check us out on Instagram, on Twitter, and I think that's about it. So,
Are we gonna do like
well,
sign off, thumbs up again?
well, do we have to?
I don't know.
No.
No. Okay.
How about we don't? How about catch you next time?
Get it.
Yes, you did.